This is The Toss-Up, where an expert line panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports. From some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that captured the world's attention, it's all right here on The Toss-Up. Teri Moren has had her crew rolling all season long. The Indiana Hoosiers women's basketball team is ranked, and they have been ranked, and barring any upsets, they will continue to be ranked for the rest of the season. This team is good and has already built up a strong NCAA tournament resume to prove it. The Hoosiers are near the top of the Big Ten, but I'll be blunt, they could be higher. 4 of the team's 6 losses have been within the conference, and IU has looked shaky at times, but the talent is there. Indiana is the only team in the nation to defeat current number 1 South Carolina. Only team. But they have also barely scraped past some of the bottom feeders in the Big Ten in Nebraska and Wisconsin. So here we are. It's crunch time. It all comes down to the wire over these next several weeks for IU women's basketball. So our panelists are here to break it down. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm joined by Haley Jordan, Christian Steiner, and we've got Jimmy Sutton over here. And Haley, as I've mentioned, the only team to beat South Carolina. They hung tight with Baylor. They hung tight with UCLA. But now in conference play, is this the same team that took down South Carolina? Or is this a different team that's barely getting past Nebraska?
Yeah, if you compare last year to this year, you see a lot of interviews, especially those with Brenna Wise, saying our team has so much room to grow. And I kept wondering what exactly that meant, but I think their defense has improved drastically from last year to this year. And I still think that there's room for more improvement, like you said. I mean, we want them to get to the top, and I think that they can do that.
Yeah, and so Christian, they've beaten some of these top teams. They've hung tight with them. Is there any sort of different style of play than what we saw early on in the season as to now? Is the team, do you think they're struggling, or do you think it's just the level of competition?
I think that as the season's gone on, I think some of their guards are starting to wear down a little bit. They've gone away from their depth that they were using in the first half of the season. Like, for example, Chanel Wilson has only played about an average of 2 minutes over the past 5 games. And Ali Patberg has already played over 40-plus minutes in the past, in 5 of the past 9 games. So if they can find a way to get Ali Patberg and their other guards some more rest and use their depth a little bit more, I think that could go a long way to improving their tournament resume come tournament time. Yeah,
and so Jimmy, I mean, what have you seen out of this team that they could sort of improve on right now? Some of these strengths that they might be able to build on.
Yeah, I think exactly going off what Christian says, what I was going to say. I mean, last game, Ali Patberg played, or the last home game, Ali Patberg played 40 minutes. That's not, you can't have that, when your guard's playing 40 minutes, you can't get a whole lot of production. She's going to get gas by the end of the game. So I think when you look at it, with all this playing time coming from guards, and they're only having like 6 or 7 women playing, it's really important that you look at the shooting numbers have kind of gone down, especially against the bottom feeders like you were talking about. Their shooting percentages haven't been as high as I'm sure Teri Moren would like them to be. And so I think when all these girls are playing this many minutes, that the shooting percentages really get affected by that.
And so is that one of the big flaws we've seen with the team so far, or do you think that's like a strength if they're able to get it together?
I think right now, or I think early on it was good, and I think now it's really starting to affect them in all of these games and getting closer to the end of the season. Now it's hurting them more than it was in the beginning.
Okay, and so Christian, going over to you, what are some of these weaknesses that other teams have been able to expose that have made the Hoosiers look vulnerable, to say the least?
Yeah, to build off of what Jimmy said, the lack of shooting is definitely very alarming. We've seen teams abuse that with 2-3 zones in the past couple games. And because of that, you haven't seen like freshman Mackenzie Holmes do as well as she has before. She has moments like against Maryland when she scored 10 straight points in the second quarter, but for the most part, the lack of shooting is really hurting them.
And so, Haley, I know shooting is something that the team used to pride themselves on. Do you think that still is a strength of theirs if they're able to sort of get that consistency?
Yeah, I mean, right now they are second in conference from field goal percentage and third in scoring. So I don't think it's something that is an extremely big problem, but they're missing free throws. They are missing free throws, and Teri Moren is saying not only are they missing these free throws, they're missing them at times in need when when those 2 points matter. A lot of these games that they have lost, it hasn't been by much. They haven't been torched by any single team. So you better believe they better fly Brenna Wise's dad in to do free throw practices with all of these women, because that seems to work for Brenna. So hey, why don't you bring him on and try to get that free throw percentage up?
Okay, so other than Brenna Wise's father, what are some of these strengths that you think the team can really hone in on as they get down to the end of the season and then going into some of these tournament play?
I think they're a confident team, and that's something that's hard to come by, especially in the Big Ten. And I think that's due in part to Teri Moren. She instills so much confidence on these women. And I also think Brenna Wise and Allie Patberg are such great leaders, and they're great for the younger players to come. So I think that's what they have over other teams at this point.
Christian, is same sort of stuff, or where are some of these areas that IU really can just grind down on?
Yeah, I think their guard play is definitely their biggest strength. Despite the lack of shooting, as Teri Moren has noted in her press conference, they have shooters. They just, for whatever reason, as I've been talking about, their confidence isn't there, and they need to improve their confidence and improve their ability to hit threes, and I think that would definitely be an area of strength that they should be able to build on.
And so if we get the confidence down, if the team is fully confident going into this tournament play, they're able to get everyone fully healthy, everyone there ready to go, what do you think is the way towards an Indiana win?
I think the one thing that has always stood out to me with this team is it can always be anyone's night. We'll see anybody always have a night where Grace Berger drops 20 points or Brenna Wise drops 15. Allie Patberg is always going to give you that 10, 5, and 5 line. And I think that's really important for this team, and that is why you see, we've talked about confidence. Like that's where this confidence comes into play. And the fact that it can be anyone's night is why confidence is so important in that, and that's how that can happen.
Yeah, it can be anyone's night. It's our night right here on the Toss-Up. And thanks all for joining us. And we're going to come back after a break. We're going to take a little bit of a recess. I guess this could be our halftime. But coming up after the break, we've got even more Toss-Up. We're going to hear from Aiden Cantner talking about the rest of the team, and we get into our own little segments, our own games, so we can have some fun here. So thanks for sticking around and stay with us. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. Now, still plenty of women's basketball to talk on the panel, but first we're going to go over to our Aiden Cantner as he has something he wants to talk about. Aiden, what you got for us?
As the women's basketball season races towards Selection Monday, the Hoosiers have already matched their regular season win total from last season. At fourth in the Big Ten with 4 games left, IU is solidly in the NCAA tournament by all projections, with a chance to host in the first 2 rounds in Bloomington as a top 4 seed. ESPN women's basketball bracket expert Charlie Cream has the Hoosiers as a 5 seed in his latest projection, only 1 seed line from hosting. Here's the resume. IU sits at number 20 in the AP poll, having been ranked for 14 straight weeks, a school record. The Hoosiers are 15th in the RPI, and they own the single best win in the country, being the only blemish on number 1 South Carolina's 22-1 record. While we traveled home, ate, and spent time with our families on Thanksgiving evening, the Hoosiers trounced the Gamecocks 71-57 in the Paradise Jam tournament in the U.S. Virgin Islands, in a game that thrust IU into the national spotlight. However, since then, IU doesn't have any other top-tier victories. Wins on the road at Rutgers on New Year's Eve and in Mackey Arena against arch-rival Purdue are solid, but not the kind of games that spark national attention and praise. They've left ranked games against UCLA, Northwestern, Iowa, and 2 games against Maryland on the table. This, along with recent struggles against lesser opponents like Wisconsin and Nebraska, have only ramped up the pressure they've put on themselves. IU currently sits behind Maryland, Iowa, and Northwestern in the Big Ten, but they don't have any games left against them in the regular season, so they'll have to keep winning and bide their time until the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis, and hope to get at least 1 win over one of those teams to play in Bloomington during the first week of the NCAA tournament. So, although the Hoosiers are a virtual lock to make the tournament for the second straight season, some of the little flaws that have plagued the team have pushed them on the outside looking in terms of playing their opening round games at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. If IU wants some home games for the tournament, they will need to correct themselves for potential rematches against the conference's elite come the first week of March.
All right, thank you, Aiden. Now, coming back to our panel, it's our own game time for our segment. This one is called Take Your Pick. It's a pretty simple game. I'm just going to go around the panel. I'm going to basically give you a set of circumstances, a situation, and I want you to make your pick on what's going to play out, how that's going to resolve. So, to start off, Haley, I'm going to say you're down in a game. You're Indiana basketball. You're down in this game. 1 point game, 7 seconds on the clock. That's the number I've come up with. Who is this ball going to, and what is the play you're drawing up?
I have two scenarios, one for my risky side and one for the safe side.
Okay.
Safe side, let's pass it to Mackenzie Holmes and have her shoot one of her layups, okay? And then risky side, let's have Jalen Penn go in for a three. Against Purdue, she sunk 2 threes and was kind of a clutch player. So why win by 1 when you can win by 2?
There we go. I like your thinking. Christian, what about you? What's the play you're drawing up?
The play that I'm drawing up, just like Haley said, involves Jalen Penn, but for me, I'm going to have Ali Patberg with the ball up at the top of the three-point line. We'll have a pick and roll with Alexa Goulbe. If it's not there, then Jalen Penn most likely would be open from 3 from the corner. And as we've seen before, she has a penchant for making big plays, especially against Wisconsin when she hit the game-tying 3.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I think you go right back to what Teri Moren talked about in that Wisconsin game. They were only down 3 at that time, but what I would have happen is I would have Ali Patberg drive the ball to the hoop. You have Mackenzie Holmes down on the low block and Jalen Penn out on the wing for a 3. You know, anything's going to happen, especially when it's Ali Patberg. Teams are going to collapse and they're going to come towards her. So you got to think if they don't collapse, Ali Patberg is getting that layup. Or she's getting the foul call or something. She's going to get that. And so I think either Mackenzie Holmes' defender will come and she can dish it off to Mackenzie, or if Jalen Penn's defender drops down, then you kick it out to Jalen for the 3. And I think that's definitely the easiest, most possible, most plausible situation to do there.
Yeah, and come NCAA tournament time, we know anything can happen. This very well could be a scenario we see play out. So you've all got it on the record. We'll see what actually happens. But before we get to the NCAA tournament, we've got the Big Ten tournament. And so, Jimmy, I'm going to go over to you. What do you think is IU's ideal path for Indiana to be able to win the NCAA tournament? Now, I'm not saying like Northwestern and Maryland all get knocked out in the first round, but something along the lines, who would IU most want to play if they want a shot at winning the title?
So going off those top 3 teams, I think that IU really wants to play Iowa. You know, on the road at Iowa, IU took them to double overtime, and that's really impressive. That's hard to do, especially considering Iowa does not lose there very often. And so if Indiana got the chance to play Iowa again, I think they would learn from that past game, and I really think they would have a good chance of beating them in the tournament as compared to playing Maryland or Northwestern. I think they would have a better chance against Iowa, and I think that's who they would rather see out of those top 3 teams.
Okay, Christian, take your pick. Who do you think Indiana would want to see the most?
I think they'd want to see Northwestern. I mean, they lost to Northwestern at home. Northwestern does play a 2-3 zone, but if they're able to gain confidence in their shooting ability, I think they could definitely take Northwestern. Maryland's just not the team that they want to see at this moment.
Definitely not Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
Haley, what do you think?
And that's the team. I agree. I think Northwestern is also a good answer just because, you know, Maryland shot them down a couple of times. By Northwestern, yeah, they did lose to Northwestern, the Hoosiers did, but it wasn't a big marginal loss there. So I think if they saw them again, they would learn from their mistakes like Jimmy had mentioned before, and I think it would be a good game.
Okay, so we've got the T on the Big Ten tournament. Now I need to know about the NCAA tournament. Out of, say, the top 8 nationally, roughly, the 1 and 2 seeds in the tournament that Indiana, there's a good chance, might end up having to face. Which do you think is the team Indiana most, and to counter that, least would want to see out of some of these top 8 teams? Because, I mean, South Carolina's number 1 in the nation, but also that's Indiana's win. So what do you think? Most want to play, least want to play come NCAA tournament time?
At this point, they're all so dang good, I wouldn't want to play any one of them. But I think that Baylor would be a good option for Indiana, even though Baylor is really good sitting at number 2. Indiana, again, has played them before, didn't lose by that much. I think it was about 14 points, so they know their style. And if you can beat out the number 2 seed, boom, you're on your way to the number 1 spot.
All right, Christian, do you want to face Baylor if you're Indiana?
I think I'd want to face Baylor, but if there's a team that I'd pick that I don't want to face, I don't think IU wants to see South Carolina again. South Carolina had the #1 recruiting class coming into the this college basketball season, and as you can tell, that as the season's gone on, their class has been playing extremely well. 2 of South Carolina's players are on the Wooden Watch Awards list this year, and they have 4 players averaging double figures and have had 8 players that have led the team in scoring. South Carolina is definitely on a roll, and I think that if IU was to go against them, South Carolina would have a vendetta against them.
Yeah, South Carolina's been incredibly hot. I mean, I've watched a couple of their games. I'm like, how did anyone beat them?
Seriously.
So, Jimmy, is that the team that IU least wants to face? Is there a different team in there that IU might match up well?
It's absolutely South Carolina. I would not. They may have beaten them already, but like you said, they're going to have a vendetta against them. They're going to want to come back and beat them. They're their only loss. They're on an 11-game win streak. They haven't lost since then. That's very impressive. If I was Indiana, I would definitely not want to face them. But who I would want to face is UCLA. That's another team in the top 8 that Indiana has played this season. I'm not sure exactly how much they lost by, but it wasn't too much. I remember it being at least somewhat close of a game. And I think the one thing that this team's really good at, and Teri Moren has taught them well, is they know how to learn from their mistakes. We've already said that before, and I think that would be a great reason for IU to go back and get revenge against UCLA.
All right. Whole array of possibilities that can happen. We're moving on to our quick fire round. Try and keep your answers with 20 seconds or less, but shouldn't be too difficult. We're going to start off. We're going back to the Big Ten tournament, which we know for sure IU will be in the Big Ten tournament. Where does Indiana finish in the Big Ten tournament, but also even before that in the conference as a whole? Jimmy?
I think a lot of things have to go into play, whether who's playing well or who's playing not. But I'll tell you, I'll say top 4. I'll say fourth or third is really where I can realistically see them finishing. If they go on a hot streak, I can definitely see them winning it. But realistically, I think it's 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, I think the Hoosiers are going to finish 4th in the regular season standing. Iowa and Maryland Northwestern both have 2 losses, and I don't see them dropping any games for the remainder of the season, just like I don't see IU dropping any of the games in the remainder of the season. I think that IU is going to be, I think it will be IU Maryland in the Big Ten finals, and unfortunately I don't think IU is able to deal with Maryland's size that they have.
Yeah, Maryland's already beaten them twice before. Haley, do you think that Indiana's going to be able to win that Big Ten title?
No, I think that we're going to finish out, or they're going to finish at number 3 behind Iowa and Maryland. But we like an upset. We like an upset here at Indiana. So yeah, let's see them win. But for now, I'm going to sit pretty at number 3.
Okay, so you say you like an upset. Now we're going to flip it around. Going into the NCAA tournament, Indiana's most likely going to have one of those higher seeds. Do they get upset early? Do they go on to upset someone else? Where does Indiana finish in the NCAA tournament?
My guess, as of right now, day before Valentine's Day, Sweet 16.
Sweet 16 for Indiana. No further, no
Sweet
sooner?
16, my conscience is telling me possibly Elite 8. But
Okay.
for now, Sweet 16.
Okay, so we've pushed her to Elite 8. Christian, what do you have?
I'm going to say Elite 8. I think their floor is definitely Sweet 16, but if they're able to gain confidence in their shooting ability, they could definitely be a team that could make the Final Four. As we've seen, they can beat top teams, especially with them beating Baylor, but until they beat Maryland, I don't think we can really realistically see them making it to the Final Four.
All right, now, Jimmy, the big question, does Indiana win it all?
Oh, man, I would love to say yes to that. I really would, but there are way too many other good teams out there that I truly do not think that Indiana could take down. I mean, if Grace Berger and Allie Patberg and Jalen Penn, they all want to drop 25 a game and everyone else plays well, sure, let's see it. Champions at the end of 2020. But no, realistically, I do think their floor is the Sweet 16. I think they're making it there no matter what. But I do think the 2 keys for this team are Grace Berger and Mackenzie Holmes. If both of them are playing well and the team is shooting well as a whole, I can definitely see them going to Elite 8 or maybe even Final Four.
All right, so now as we hit the home stretch of our show, final question is about the home stretch of IU season. Who do you think has the most to prove? Is it a particular player? Is something the team needs to do to step up? But does anyone have something they still have to prove, Haley?
Grace Berger, she's one of the younger ones, and she starts, and Teri Moren has put a lot of trust into her. Her teammates have put a lot of trust into her this season as well. I remember a couple games ago, Grace Berger was on fire during one of those games, and Teri Moren in a post-game interview, she said, I don't know what Grace drank tonight, but we want more of it. And, you know, she's shown up every single game, and she's one of those players where you can progressively see her get better every single game, and I think she's going to be one to watch during this tournament.
Is she drinking the Michael Jordan special juice from Space Jam? I don't know.
That, Powerade, I don't know what she's got
I dropped
going.
25 and 10 that night, career highs in both. So.
There we go. Yeah. All right, Christian. So moving on from the Michael Jordan's water, energy drink, whatever it was, who do you think has the most to prove that can really step up down the stretch?
I think it's Brenna Wise. She's a senior this year. This is going to be her last chance at being able to make it far in the tourney. And right now she's kind of in a bit of a shooting slump, but if they can get her to improve her shooting percentage, I think that could go a long way in unlocking the potential for IU to make a run in the tournament.
All right. And Jimmy, what do you think?
I'm going to go with not a player here, actually. I'm going to say Teri Moren. I think she's done really great things for this team in the past couple of years that she's been here. They've had an NIT championship. They've made it to the Sweet 16. They got to the second round last year at least. I know that. And I think the real key for her is, can she get this team past the Sweet 16? Can they go farther? Can they go to the Elite Eight? Can they make it to the Final Four? And I think if she does that for this team, it's going to prove a lot. It's going to look really good on her coaching resume.
Yeah, a second-round appearance last year as they got the upset there. So if Moren can prove she can take that next step, that would be huge for her career and huge for this Indiana program. Well, thank you all so much for being on the show. That does it for us this week. But be sure to continue our discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. So toss it up, find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.